Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's pre-market forecast. It is Wednesday, January 22nd. It's about 6:30 a.m. here, East Coast time. Coming to you from the Northeast, where the air temperature right now is -8. Bitter cold out there. All my dogs are laying in front of the wood stove. They don't even really want to go outside. Too cold. But anyways, we're gonna start off with the NQ like we normally do. We can see it pulled up here. Yesterday, if you saw yesterday's video, we were looking for the move. We're up here on the 4-hour time frame. We were looking for the move, through the +1 up to this +2. We kind of chopped around yesterday. We didn't really get that move yesterday. We are sort of getting that overnight right now, in the morning, last night, and then this morning, the futures. So when the market opens, we have a good chance if we rip up to this, little over 22,000 area up here, around here. And then we'll have to see what happens. We're a little bit, and we'll get to this too on the ES. We're a little bit out of sync with the ES. We're already pushing above the +2 on the ES. So not really in sync. Sometimes when that happens, we end up with a little bit more choppy moves rather than just pick a direction and run. So we'll have to see how today goes. In general, we do want to hold above this area here. If we, start to sell off back into yesterday's range, we could see a pullback down to this 21.5, right around yesterday's lows ish. So but forecasts still to the upside. You can see on this daily chart, we are breaking out of this little bit of a downwards wedge, if you want to call it. Of course, everybody's looking at that. So now would be a perfect time to rip things down a little bit, stop a bunch of people out, and then continue on. So see what happens there. But as far as the standard deviations go, we talked about yesterday that this move up was a healthier move than any of these because we've retested all these levels. Every standard deviation that we broke, we came back to retest. Broke here, retested, broke here, retested. We closed at the +1 yesterday night, and we've kind of come up. So I wouldn't be shocked if we went up to this 22,000, maybe a little bit higher, 22,050, and then possibly come back down to retest this 21,800 area. So that's the NQ. Switch over to the ES here real quick. Similar structure, but you can see that we already are starting to push up through this +2. We had a similar day yesterday where we didn't actually really chop quite as much as the NQ. We sort of picked direction, but it was very just grindy in the upward direction. We can see yesterday we had lots of relative volume. If you look down here on the 5-minute chart, we had lots of, all this yellow means that relatively speaking, there was all kinds of volume coming into the market. So that's just interesting to note. It could be, breakout volume looking to push back to the all-time highs. But when you see that, especially on the upside, it could be absorption to the upside. So we'll have to see how that pans out. In general, if we do push back through all-time highs, I do expect it to be a little bit short-lived. I believe we are knocking on the door of some sort of a downturn, whether it's a rip the band-aid off situation like 2020, and it's a quick it's a quick grab to the downside, or whether it's some sort of a crisis like the 08-09 where it sort of just continually rolled over for a year and a half. We'll have to see exactly how it pans out, but in general, on the longer time frames, I do believe we're knocking on the door of having a medium-term high put in. We'll just have to see how that pans out. Exactly what the downturn is, we'll have to see what the excuse is, what the narrative is. But from a day trading standpoint, we're just going to trade each day as it comes. Today, there's no real reason to go short. We are at these levels of +2, which generally speaking, we would expect to see some sort of a pullback to at least retest, this +1. So something like that is what would be expected. Whether we get that or not, we'll see. We could just grind sideways, and we could go parabolic. If we just go straight through these levels, that's when a lot of hedging takes place, and you just see this waterfall in the upward direction or downward, whichever direction. But when you start getting hedging at the exchange level, it's just like adding fuel to a fire. So we start to get out these bands with no pullbacks, it could go pretty parabolic in the upward direction. So we'll have to wait and see. If we take a look at rates here, we're basically, we're still pretty high on rates. We have had last few days, we have had a little bit of a downturn, but we'll have to see if that's just the next lower high. If rates continue to go up, we see inflation is this orange line here. We see that kind of starting to continually round up a little bit. Inflation's starting to tick back up. Rates are continuing to go up. All the different time frames here. These are all the different lengths of rates. The bright green is the short term. That's the 3-month. And we can see in a bigger picture, this was the longest yield inversion in history, basically right here. I mean, this was essentially a year plus, really, year and a half of inverted rate. And if we go back, there's never been a time in history where it's been inverted that long. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Normally, as we start to uninvert, which we have done, just starting to, that's when, things take a downturn. Money starts to come back into bonds and out of stocks. So we'll have to see how that plays out, what the narrative is. News, no news really for the whole week. There's a couple, things from other countries, but nothing really in the US that's of meaning. We got Friday, what's that? Home sales. Yeah, nothing crazy. Nothing crazy on news this week. So yeah, pretty straightforward forecasts. We're just kind of, we're looking for basically sideways to up, possibly if we, right out of the gates, if we want to retest, like on the NQ, if we want to dip down a little bit, retest this 800 area, that could, act as a little bit of a grabbing some inventory to then move up to the upside. So that's all for today. Pretty straightforward. Good luck, traders, and we'll talk to you later. We'll see you tomorrow morning.